So I wanted to do sort of a fireside chat. I was getting a lot of questions from students that I talked to this week about what I'd been up to, how I got started, what it's like to start a company, what it's like to go through an accelerator program like Y Combinator in Silicon Valley. And I was fortunate enough to be invited here to discuss all that with you guys. So this is actually a picture of this is my going away party from the University of Michigan. The day before I hopped on a really early flight and flew out to California to start Olark. And I don't recommend grilling cake like this. It's not very effective. There's better ways to grill cake. All right, so I just wanted to show some proof that I was at SI. I'm actually still on the website. If you go to academics, student funding, there's me right there. And so now I'm out in Silicon Valley. And this is our actual office. We're working out of this 1908 sorority house that's right by Stanford. You can walk. Next door is Mark Zuckerberg's old apartment, and I'm not even kidding. Like, he used to live like next door. The house was once rented by Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX fame. So it's kind of fun being out there in a place where your neighbors are all startups. And I don't think, what's interesting about Palo Alto is there's tons and tons of startups that are run out of houses and run out of apartments, and so they seem to look the other way on zoning, which is just an interesting side effect. So this is what I do. So me and my co-founders run this company called Olark. What we do is we make these little boxes you can put on websites so that your customers can talk to you, and you can answer their questions so they'll buy what you're selling. And it's a very simple concept. Just make it really easy for people to reach through the web and talk to the person on the other end. So a lot of e-commerce sites use this to talk to their customers, to answer their questions before they buy things. A lot of startups use this to get feedback from their early customers so that they can iterate their product and make it a better product. And we've had a lot of success. Millions of people see this every day on a website. We have thousands of paying customers, and things are going pretty well. So who am I, right? So I told you a little bit about how I went here. I was actually here for 3 years, working with Mark Ackerman and Mark Newman. Before that, I was at Virginia Tech for 5 years, where I got a bachelor's in computer science, a bachelor's in business information technology, and a master's in HCI, which is a little bit more technical than the HCI degree here, but it's similar in some ways. Now, at the same time, I was starting companies. And basically, I've been a student researcher and an entrepreneur we'll call it from 1998 until 2009. I was doing both at the same time. I was running companies and I was going to school. And I would say I did all right at both those things, but I probably could have done a better job if I had just done one all the time rather than like splitting my time between both. And I'll go into that a little bit later. I'll actually talk a little bit more about these companies. I just wanted to give you an idea that I've been a student and an entrepreneur for a long time. And not until 2009 did I take the plunge and really focus on just one thing. So my first lesson for you guys who want to start companies or just want to know how people start companies is to learn by doing. So when I was in middle school, I used to play a lot of computer games. And I used to spend a lot of time playing computer games and learning how to manage resources like tanks and little guys to walk around the screen. Now, I would say that may be kind of useful to get really good at that skill, but in the grand scheme of things, that's really not going to be that useful for your long-term career. And so I decided, hey, spending all this time playing video games, I should do something better with computers. The internet is starting to take off. Things are getting interesting. So I started a consulting company. I think most people who get into the internet start off by starting a consulting company because you're kind of a techie guy, your friends aren't. They have parents who need technical things done. And you start writing code. So I didn't really know how to program when we started this thing. We knew how to make basic websites. We started off, and we managed to fool some people into paying us to build things for them, and made a few $100s this way. We sold this product actually like twice for $2,000 each. It was pretty cool. It was a Metacrawler. I don't know if you guys have seen Dogpile or Metacrawler.com. Basically, it was before Google, and it combined the results for a lot of search engines, so you could see all the results on one page. And so what happened after that is, you start off, you're programming, you're kind of learning how to program, you're learning how to sell things, you're learning how to get paid, because back then we couldn't take credit cards. People had to mail us checks or pay us with Western Union. And so most people who do consulting realize that they don't like consulting at some point. That might be true for everyone, but it was definitely true for us, right? So we didn't like having to go out and find more jobs and building cool things for other people. We wanted to build cool things for us. And so around that time, doing all these consulting projects, we had trouble finding a place to put them online. So we had to pay these other companies to put servers online, host things. We're like, oh, well, we can do that ourselves. We can learn how to build a hosting company. And in 1999, I founded our first corporate entity. So we became an LLC, a limited liability partnership, in 1999. And actually, what's funny is even back then, we realized how useful live chat was. We had live chat on our website back when we were starting the hosting company. It was really valuable for us. So this is a slide where I talk about failure. I talk about a lot of really stupid things that we did while we were running that web hosting company, while we were putting sites online for people. So this is actually a very interesting story. So at the time, we were in high school. We built the system to automate all of web hosting, so people could come buy stuff from us, set up their sites, set up email addresses, all those things that everyone can do automatically now. We built it in 1999, and we built it before there was any vendor that provided software like this. And so people came to us and were like, hey, we want to buy this automation system you built. We'll pay you thousands of dollars for it. And we were like, no way, that's our competitive advantage. We were in high school. We don't have to do any work. This thing just prints money. And I even had a friend in high school who was like, you should really sell this. This is really good. And we're like, no way. And so what ended up happening in that is other people came up, they built hosting automation systems, and soon everyone had hosting automation systems, and we had one that we had to maintain ourselves. So, seeing the value of the product that you're building is really important. And you will make mistakes when you're building a company, but it's important if someone comes to you and starts offering you money for something you built that you're not selling, you may want to consider selling it. Secondly, in 2001, we had our best revenue year ever. We made $170,000, right? That was my senior year of high school, total revenue. And about that time, this was like pre-dot-com failure, right around the same time as dot-com failure, there was companies going around buying up web hosting companies and offering 2 to 3 times annual revenue. And so we had people contact us and we're like, hey, we want to buy this thing. We're like, no way. In the future, we're going to make so much more money and we'll feel really silly for selling this thing. But you know what happened? Some other people started dumping lots and lots of money into web hosting. It became basically a commodity marketplace. And some of the big guys were just offering a free year of service. And so we basically got killed on price competition and stopped making any money. So it's important to sort of understand the bigger context of what's going on when you're working on a product. Like if your product is about to become a commodity, you should probably sell it. Just get rid of it. It's really hard to compete in a commodity. Or you should figure out how to be special in some way so that people don't just compare you based on price. And so Nethernet, the consulting company, and Netherweb, the consulting company, were basically side projects for me. I was going to school at the same time. I was doing this on the weekends, after class, and during the summers. Right? I never had any summer jobs. Basically, my companies funded all my education, more or less. And that was fun, and it was a good experience, but I never really committed. I never really did one thing. I was always hedging my bets, and who knows what could have happened if I didn't go to college and I ran this web hosting company. But I'm not dwelling on that. But it's just something to think about, that you're always making trade-offs when you're doing this. And it's also really hard to stay motivated when you're working on something for a side project for a really long time, especially if it's not making money. And so what happened was that Netherweb became basically a slum. And I became a slumlord because we had this thing. It was making some money, but it wasn't making very much money. And we had customers that were paying us for it every month. And they would occasionally send us emails and ask us questions. And we would basically ignore all questions that we ever got for years. It was actually really bad. And it was demoralizing. And it made us feel bad and feel like horrible people. And probably we were. But what we ended up doing is when something gets to that stage, it's a good idea not to let something get to that stage. But what we did is we managed to sell the company to a former employee who we had not really offered such a great deal. He went off and started his own hosting company. So at the very least, we were able to make a little bit of money off this thing. We sold it for 1 year's revenue, which is not that bad. I mean, it's better than just letting it die, but it should not be your goal. Your goal of selling a company should not be selling it for 1 year's revenue. And so throughout this whole experience, we learned a ton. I learned so much more. Like, it was nice having school on one hand to sort of teach me the theoretical and maybe some abstract models, but doing it for real and just getting out there and failing and not knowing what you're doing and just learning how to solve problems is what you need to do and what you will be doing if you decide to start a company. I mean, there's things that, for example, when we first started Nethernet, we didn't have a driver's license. No one in our company had a driver's license. My dad had to drive us to honestly this guy's house where we had our first server hosted. I mean, there's just a lot of things that you realize as you go through this process. You learn how to negotiate deals with bigger companies because we had all these servers and we had to put them somewhere. We had to trick someone into giving us a really good deal or convince them that working with us was a really great idea. At one point, we had negotiated space in a data center that Google was also in, and we had the best deal in that entire data center. And someone came back years later, and when we were trying to reduce our buy, so we had said we were going to buy this much space, and we tried to reduce it. When we went in and tried to reduce the data center buy, they're like, I can't believe you got that price for that space. Like, your price is going to go up if you reduce the size of your space allocation. It was almost going to double or something like that. It was just crazy. So there's all these things you learn how to do when you're out there on your own. Another thing we learned how to do was to buy an office and just burn money. So we had an office for that company that we never went to, that we thought were so cool. We had some tables and some filing cabinets and everything else. Like, I would say, if you don't need an office, if you're not going to go there every single day, do not rent an office. What we did is we moved all that stuff into a storage unit, and we spent a lot less money, and we still got all the benefit that we were really getting out of it, which was a place to store junk. So all right, and now this is some obligatory thank you SI. So I came to SI. I was doing a PhD here. And I had these companies on the side. They weren't really making any money, so I was kind of moved on. I was doing research and things like that. And I saw some partners that I was working with. They were working full time for these companies, and I was doing a PhD. And so I was sitting in SI, and we've been kicking around different ideas for startups and projects and things like that. So we're sitting in SI 701. Doing my reading, and I'd read an article by Shosama Zuboff, who I'm probably killing her name, but she's a Harvard Business School professor, and she was writing about disintermediation. So writing about this future where consumers are talking more directly to producers, and there's a lot less middlemen in the system. So I'm thinking, oh, well, that's interesting. We have this idea for live chat, and so. Hey, if there's going to be a lot more producers, there are going to be a lot more consumers. Those consumers and producers need some way to talk to each other. And all the existing solutions out there are really bad, or they're built for call centers. They're not built for producers for producers to directly talk to consumers. And so, given this global view from SI, I kind of had this light bulb in my head, and I was like, hey, you know what? The market's going to get a ton bigger for this, and the big guys are all focused on like the really big companies. I bet there's an opportunity to build something for the small guys. Let's see if it works. And so, as we thought about that, and given, still this is our SI, like our dive in SI, right? So building this product, it's not, so you need to think about when you're trying to sell someone something, when you're trying to get someone to use something that you're building, you're not just trying to build something that's really easy to use. You're not using, like Fitts Law to build like the most optimum user interface. You guys probably don't even learn Fitts Law anymore. But so what you need to understand is, your technology is part of this really complex system. There's people, there's politics, there's information, there's the actual engineering behind it, and you need to build things that are really easy to adopt, not just easy to use, like easy to make part of your daily life, so that they will provide continuing value, so that people will continue to pay you money, so that you can build a company that will be big and make an impact on the world. So anyway, we in 2007, given that let's build something that's easy to adopt idea, like, all right, let's start Abla. And Abla was a really bad name for a company. It was really short, which I liked, but no one knows Spanish. You guys may know Spanish, but on average, no one knows Spanish. And on average, everyone only likes .com domain names. So in general, I would say if you're starting a company, get a .com domain name and don't use Spanish. That's a lesson. Okay. So anyway, well, I'll talk more about. Actually, I'll talk a little bit more about this. So the one thing, so we went through Y Combinator, which is this very well-known startup incubator in Silicon Valley, and Paul Graham is the guy who runs this, and he's becoming more of a pundit, and like people ask him for his opinion a lot about startups and things like that nowadays. And so there's this idea that he kind of crafts your startup and like helps you figure out what to do. The only thing that Paul Graham ever did for us was he convinced us to change our name from Abla to something else. He didn't care what it was. He recommended Funnel Cat, so that to give you an idea of how good at names he is. So in any case, thank you, Paul Graham, for not letting us continue with the name Abla as our company. Just think about that when you're thinking about how cool it will be to name your company in .ly or .im. That you tell that to your mother-in-law, and she'll think there's a .com at the end of it. So anyway, I digress. So as I was talking to students, the most common question that I got from people in the tech arb and just sort of hanging out in SI was, how do I build a team? So a lot of people talk about how, I have this great idea, I just need an engineer to build it. I just need a designer who's going to make it pretty. I just need a businessman so I can sell it. That's actually, I would say that's a really bad way of approaching your problem space. What you really need, okay. You know what? Let's see, I'll come back to that. Okay, so what you really need to do is you need to make a lot of friends, right? And it's actually not that hard to make friends. You guys are friendly, you need to have a lot of friends in order to find the people that will help you run your business. And a lot of people can learn how to do things. So let's say your idea is like, I need a business guy, because without a business guy, I'm not going to be able to sell this. Well, you can make a lot of friends, and you can maybe make a friend that's smart and likes to read books and likes to make friends with business guys so you can ask them for advice. Because in the end, it's just this really big learning process. An average business guy is not going to know how to solve your particular problem. He hasn't seen your company before 10 times in case studies, because your company is a new company and it's doing something new. A lot of education in business school is around cases, so things that have happened in the past. And there are some similarities, but it's mostly bigger company oriented. If you need to find technical people, go to meetups. Try to learn how to program yourself. Like a lot of people will help you learn how to program. People love helping other people learn how to program. And in that process, you'll make some friends with some people that are technical. And maybe you guys will get excited and start some side project or start building something together. So I would say view your team as mostly you're trying to expand your network and you're trying to make a lot of friends. And those friends will help you find the right people. They'll help you get advice. They'll help you hire people in the long run. So in general, have a lot of friends. And let me jump back to why building a team is not easy at all. So I did this a little bit out of order, but that's all right. So this is the founding team of Abla to Olark. So this is the companies I founded. So in 2007, this is while I was at first year PhD. It was 4 guys: me, my cousin Roland, and my friend Kevin, who I'd started all these other companies with, and this 4th guy, David, who was a really good designer. So, and he actually designed that Abla guy. And so he actually, David decided he didn't want to do a startup, so he left at some point during 2007. We just bought him out for a few $1,000s. In 2008, there was this company called Meebo in California, and they emailed me and said, "Hey, we want to buy you guys. You want to come out to California, and we'll see if it's a good fit." And so they flew us out to California. At this point, it was just me, Roland, and Kevin. They flew us out to California, and we met the whole team. We saw the office. We met all their founders. It was a really fun experience. And we're like, this is weird. This kind of feels like a job interview. I thought their due diligence would be a little bit different. But at the time, we're like, we've never sold a company before. We don't know what's going on. So we got back to Michigan, got a phone call from the CEO, and he's like, we want to buy you guys for like the tens of thousands of dollars, and then we want to hire Kevin. And I was like, all right, well, that seems stupid. We're not going to sell you the company, but if you want, you can hire Kevin. And because Kevin was a really good friend of mine, and I was like, hey, you know what? If Kevin wants to move to California, so be it. I'm doing a PhD. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with this company. And we worked pretty hard in keeping Kevin on the team, but they eventually won with cookies and flying out to Norfolk to recruit him and paying him like 4 times what he was making. So so Kevin left, and so it was basically just me and Roland in 2008. And we reached this point where we're like, all right, is this thing going to die? Like, am I going to sit and I'm going to focus on being a professor? Am I going to focus on my PhD? Or is Roland going to go, he was doing freelancing and doing consulting at times, is Roland going to go to architecture school, which was one of his dreams. And we're like, all right, we got this thing, it's picking up steam, let's try to make it real. This is something we've always wanted to do. So we had to go find another member of the team, because I'm pretty technical. Roland is an excellent designer, but my strength is not technology. Like my ultimate strength is, in my opinion, is sort of building teams and motivating people a little bit. And so I really, really needed someone who was going to come on and be that 3rd guy who was going to run technology for us in the long run. So we tried out a friend of mine named George, who had a condo but hated his job, and he thought about selling his condo, but the market was down in 2008, so there's no way he could have sold his condo and made any money. And plus, we would have needed to pay him enough to pay his mortgage, so it didn't work with George. We tried out some other people. What eventually happened is, here in Ann Arbor, I was doing the make a lot of friends approach, because I needed to find another engineer to help me out. So I went to all these events in Ann Arbor. I went to Coffee House Coders. I went to a startup drinks. I went to a lot of different meetups. Started hanging around more engineers. And I met this guy named Matt, who was an excellent engineer and crazy enough to quit his job and join me to move to California. And so met Matt. And then soon after meeting Matt, so this is Matt right here. Soon after meeting Matt, I met a guy named Andrew, through the same way, who was a junior econ major at the University of Michigan, who he was like president of the venture club or something like that. So we're like, all right, we'll let this, he's a business guy, I got nothing against him, well, he's a cool guy, we'll bring him out too. And pardon my business person jokes, this is like, basically all you do in California is bash business people. And so anyway, so Andrew came on for Y Combinator, and at the end of it, he had to decide whether to continue working with us or go back to school. And he decided to go back to school because he wasn't going to get that much equity from us at the end of the day. And so we replaced him with this guy named Zach, who is another amazing engineer, and that became our core founding team. The one thing to keep in mind from this is if you're starting a company, do not give equity to people on day one. That is a really, really bad idea. What you want to do is you want to give them a structured agreement where, as you divide up the company, there's this concept called cliff vesting, which means once they're with the company for a year, they get their first amount of equity. So you say like, hey, Pablo, I'm going to give you 50% of my company. And Pablo's like, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to start a company with you. We're like, but I'm going to give it to you over 4 years. So this is pretty standard. It's going to vest over 4 years. And the first 25% you don't get until you stick with it for a year. And so we're hanging out, Pablo and I are working together, and then one day we have this big fight, and I decided to leave, and I signed the same agreement that Pablo did. And so Pablo still owns 100%. So the company still has that 50% of equity that it can use to bring on another founder. Because once you kind of permanently dole out equity, that equity is gone. You will need, and if founders leave, you don't want them owning any of the company. You basically do not want someone who's not contributing to the growth of the company or has put in money owning equity, because equity is very useful for recruiting people and raising money. It's not useful for someone, like say you bring on someone and they leave and they just own a chunk of your company. And I know people who've made that mistake where they're like, oh yeah, we're cool. We're going to give everyone equity on day one to motivate them. It's like, no, it's a really, really bad idea. Anyway, so been digressing. So as I was talking about, make a lot of friends. And you should date those people before getting married, right? Do a small project together with the people that you're working with. Don't be like, oh, I really like you. Will you be my co-founder? You should do something. Try them out first, because it's a really long road, and some personalities clash, and you do not want clashing personalities. There's enough stuff to deal with in a company beyond personal and political issues, especially when you're just a really small team. So if someone's not getting along, whether it's you or whether it's them, and you can't resolve that conflict, it is very, very unlikely that you will be successful. It is possible to be successful, but there's a lot of crap you need to go through to get there. And if you can't resolve those personal issues, you're just going to have so much trouble. You're gonna have something is just going to be eating at you, and it'll be very stressful. Life is too short to stay in something that's not fun, whether it be a horrible marriage or a horrible co-founder situation. It's a common metaphor, is this marry your co-founders approach. Okay, so you have this team, you've gone out, you made a lot of friends, and you're like, all right, what do we do now? I got this idea. So here's my advice to you. If you have an idea, and I'm really lazy. So you have an idea, you're like me, you're lazy, you're like, all right, I don't want to waste all this time doing all this work if this idea is useless. Let me figure out whether this idea is worth something as fast as possible. So my approach is kind of the more bootstrappy approach, where I like ideas that make money. So this advice is more useful if you're into an idea where someone's going to pay you for a service you provide. Not if you're going to build Facebook. This approach may not apply quite as well, but I think there's some lessons to learn. So let's see. Yes. So there's a new way to validate ideas, and it's been proven. It's been validated as a way to validate ideas, and it's Kickstarter. So these are guys from Virginia Tech. One of them is a programmer. The other one's some poli-sci major. I assume he's a designer. And as far as I know, all they did is build a video. So what they did is they built a very nice mock-up video of a mail client, a SaaS mail client, and they convinced people to prepay for that service. So if you can convince someone to prepay for your service and it's enough money to justify building it, that's a really, really good way to validate your idea. Because you don't even need to build anything except for a video, apparently. And what you can do So it wasn't just they built a video. They also did a really good job promoting the fact that they did this video. So they reached out to the local, Collegiate Times. I don't know how Wired heard about them, but they did a really good job promoting this video and convincing people to pledge money before it existed, validating that there was actual demand for this project to exist. Another example of this, so that was a software example, software service example. You could also do this for hardware. So there's this guy in Portland who built a really nice dock for the iPhone, and this was a very convincing video. I actually bought one of these. I was like, man, I want one of these. But look, I mean, he raised $1.5 million, roughly speaking, with a cool video and a prototype, validating that, hey, people actually want to buy this thing. I have no idea if he's going to be able to figure out how to manufacture it. So who knows if I ever get my sweet iPad charger.
What does it do? It's so cool.
It's really heavy. So it's made out of machine-grade aluminum. So it's like, and it has a custom clip on the bottom, so it doesn't attach to your iPhone. But you should watch the video. It's pretty interesting. I like the fact that it was heavy, and I wanted to try Kickstarter. It was the first Kickstarter I'd ever tried out.
So you back this venture, and then how do you get involved?
What you do, so with these, I just give him money, and he gives me one of these things. So it's like I pre-ordering is what these two are. So both.
$60 to be able to purchase, because it says.
Yeah. So pledge 60, and if you read down here, it says get your own elevation dock and glass bead blasted finish. These will later retail for $90. So you prepay and get an early copy whenever he ships it.
And is there any sort of a guarantee or any sort of it's completely faith-based?
Well, hopefully all those 12,000 people will mob him at his house if he doesn't deliver. But I don't know. But I mean, from the entrepreneur's standpoint, who cares, right? You just prove that people are willing to pay you. From my perspective, I'm taking a risk that I'm actually going to get one of these, neat iPhone holder things. But I figured, like, hey, I've never done one of these before. Like, let's try it out. If I get ripped off, I can live with losing $60 if I don't get it. But I want to sort of be part of it. I want to understand what this crowdsourcing thing is all about, or crowdfunding. So validating hardware through pre-order, validating software through pre-order. All right, validating a SaaS. So Wufoo is a company. They went through the same incubator that we did called Y Combinator. But that's less important than the fact that the way they validated their idea was they did a UI mockup. So they built a UI, they put it online, they convinced people to look at it. Convincing people to look at it is probably the hardest, one of the harder things to do. But they convinced people to look at it. People played around with it. And when they liked it, they could leave their email address and say, hey, I like this thing. Let me know when you build it for real. So collecting email addresses is another way of validating. So with Kickstarter, you're like collecting dollars. With Wufoo, you're collecting email. They made a UI mockup, and they were collecting email addresses. So that's sort of proof, social proof, that people are like what you're doing. So that's another way to validate. Build some sort of prototype, see if people like it enough to say, hey, I want to know when this thing is real. And they were very successful with that. So after, I forget how long they were in business. We'll call it like 5 or 6 years. They sold the SurveyMonkey for $35 million, and they had raised $100,000 at that point. So like their investors made a really great return, and they all got rich. So this is a nice example of how you don't really need to raise money to make a lot of money. There's not a ton of examples that I know like this, but it's certainly possible. Their team was, I think, 13 people when they sold. So it's possible. All right, so validation with making a prototype email address, validation with writing some words on a web page. So LaunchRock is a service that lets you create these very simple landing pages. So you write a message. You write like, "I am going to build the best email client ever. If you want to know when it's done, put your email right here and hit go." And I think they have some way of. I've actually never used it. I think they have some way of using Twitter to do this, and some way of sharing on Facebook. So they collect Twitter handles, Facebook handles, and email addresses. And that's another way of validating your idea, right? You've convinced people to give you some personal information to know when whatever your idea is done. So those are all examples of ways of building, like proving your idea without doing any real work. I mean, you're going to have to think about it a lot, but you don't necessarily need a developer. You don't necessarily need a design team. You don't necessarily need a lot of money. You just need some time and some, yes?
When do you recommend not doing this?
No.
Out there and having, is there any?
I never recommend not putting your idea out there. I think that most people who think their idea is too cool and that everyone will steal it are never going to execute on their idea, because it is so hard to execute on an idea that it doesn't matter if 10 people are doing it. Like, if you put your idea out there and 10 people steal it, and they're working harder than you, I don't know. I mean, if you're afraid of having other people work harder than you, you're going to be in a hard position. You're going to be in a rough position.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily just be working harder than you, but maybe having more resources than you. I'm not saying that.
Well, they'll always have more resources than you, right? I mean, you have to be resourceful. I mean, so like, you're saying like this, you have this new idea, no one's ever heard of the idea before. You're going to put it out there and see whether people want it or not. Well, at that point, you know more than anyone else does. You know that people like it or that they hate it, right? So I can tell you, this is actually a funny story. One of our competitors put up one of these for a competing product to ours. We like looked at it and we're like, I wonder if they're going to build it. And we're like, well, and then we looked and they had posted on Hacker News, which is this website, kind of like Reddit or Dig. It's like a social news website for nerds that are into startups, and now they're fanboys, basically. And so they put it up on Hacker News, and we're like, oh, well, no one's freaking commenting on this. Who cares, right? So it can be signaling to me like, oh, well, you put this up there, neat idea, we thought about building it. Oh, okay, now we don't need to build it because they're not like getting that much traffic. Sure.
Just a quick comment on that. If you think you've got an idea that is protectable IP, file a provisional patent. You don't need to go to anybody else. All you're really doing is starting the clock to get your stake in the ground that you had the idea first. After that, it's a lot less of a risk. You can always file the actual patent within a year thereafter.
That's true.
Provisional IP.
Yeah.
You can do it yourself. Get a book.
Patent, but once you have the patent, hope you have some money, because like you need to defend that patent once you have it. So I cannot. Beyond that, I can't make any comments on patents. I'm not an expert on patents. So anyway, validation by collecting email addresses. All right. So here's another way. Find someone who will pay you to build it. This is a really great way to validate an idea. If you're, especially in enterprise software, if you're like, hey, big company X, I'll build this thing for you. You can pay me to build it, and you know, at the end of it, I'll turn into a company. So I'll keep releasing updates for you for free, right? And you'll get more value, and I'll get more value. And maybe you have to negotiate, like, all right, I'm going to do it at a discount if I get to own it, or maybe I'll negotiate, I'm not going to sell it to any of your competitors. But there are ways to get big customers to pay for things before they exist. An example for us was that we had a gaming company who wanted to use Olark, our live chat product, for community support. And they paid us $10,000, roughly, to build groups features so they could have like different groups for each game. They ended up not even using us. But that $10,000, right, to them was very little, and to us was a lot of money, and it also got that feature built, and we were able to sell that feature to a lot of other people. So if you can find someone that's a big company that'll pay you money just to build it, that's proof that the world needs it. Or at least one person needs that thing. All right, there's another approach. This is an approach we took. I'm not sure I would take it knowing all the things that I know today. We basically built an entire product. And we made it work, and we put it out there, and we waited for a lot of people to use it. And we were doing promotion and stuff like that. And by getting people to use your product and ask for features, that's another way of validating it in the market. Because if a lot of people are using your product, in theory, they're using it for some reason. And if they're asking you for features, and they're offering to pay for those features, it means that your product's providing value, and there's more value that it could be providing if someone will pay for it. And so this is our actual traffic graph from 2007 to 2008. As you can see, we did not get very much traffic. But we did get enough traffic that we were getting a reasonable number of signups and a reasonable number of people requesting premium features. And right around the end of that is when we decided to apply to Y Combinator. So we had, and there was other team factors we were talking about before that led to that, but we had some validation in the market that our traffic was growing and our usage was growing and we're getting more requests. But I mean, certainly the build the whole product, put it out there, promote it technique, it worked pretty well for us, but it can take time. And it can lead you to spending a lot of resources before you really know whether it's going to work or not. So there are certainly some risks there. All right. So the point that I wanted to just reiterate is when you're just getting started, the most useful kind of work you can be doing is finding out whether your idea is a good idea or not. And this helps when you're applying for a startup incubator, or an accelerator. This helps when you're trying to find people that are going to work with you. I mean, basically, if you can validate that your idea is good, and you go out and you do that, it'll just make a lot of things easier for you. And it's a basic first step for your business anyway. So might as well get started right now. And also, I'm going to talk a little bit about incubators or accelerators because I was asked a lot about accelerators when I was talking to various students. And one of the common questions was, so when do you apply to an accelerator? And my argument is one, could be never. You don't have to apply to an accelerator. You can build a company without going through an accelerator. A lot of people do. A lot of big companies were built without going through accelerators. If you think you need to do an accelerator, well, think about it from a strategic standpoint. Like if you're building a really nice Facebook app, you may want to go apply to the Facebook fund because they're going to give you really good access to Facebook engineers. They're going to give you a lot of money. They're going to help your product move a lot faster. So when you're thinking about accelerators, think about them strategically. It's not something that you should just automatically want to do. They will make it easier to raise some money, and they will give you some outside validation. But I mean, even when we went through Y Combinator, which at that time was not quite as famous as it is right now, and some of you guys probably haven't even heard of it, so it's still like not mainstream famous. It was very hard to raise money coming out of that. So we had a nice network, but we didn't have automatic money. So you need to be building a product that's going to be successful, regardless of whether you're doing an accelerator or not. An accelerator is not going to magically turn your product into an amazing product. Or into a company. So this is my like rules of thumb, very strong rules. This is basically like, if you do these things, you will probably get into an incubator, but remember, it's going to take time to get to this point. So one, if you can validate your idea before you get in, it'll make it a lot easier to talk to the people when you're applying. If you can think about it in a strategic way, like, oh, this particular incubator will let me talk to the VP of Coca-Cola, and I'm selling. And Coca-Cola is this really great, buyer of the product I'm selling. Well, maybe that incubator or accelerator makes more sense than something that has a bigger name. Apply if you're going to be committed, right? You shouldn't just apply like, oh, I just graduated. I need something to do for the summer. You should apply if you're committed for 4 years because good accelerators have BS detectors, and they can kind of tell, like, oh, you're just looking for something to do. You are not committed. You basically need to show that you're going to win, regardless of whether they fund you. Like, you need to be winning, because the good ones are now so popular that everyone who starts those programs already has a company, and many of them already have users, and some of them already have revenue. So, like, they're because the good ones have gotten, and I think, honestly, there's been trends in the US where more companies are being started, and surely, like, the social network helped popularize, like, oh, you can be cool and start a company. You get the bro startup or whatever. Like, it's just becoming more popular, so there's more people applying, and it's easier to pick winners because, when you have a ton of people apply, some are clearly further ahead and doing more than others. So basically, you just need to show, like, hey, I'm going to be really, really successful. And then, like, I can be really, really successful even without getting any money from Y Combinator or from Techstars or from whoever. Like, you just need to be successful, and then, maybe you'll get in and they'll want to ride your success train, because that's the way to look at it. So the best time to apply is when you don't need to. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of great accelerated programs versus okay accelerated programs. The reason I really wanted to talk about this is because I know a few SI students have gone off and have done accelerator or incubator programs that I would consider are not like the best ones. And I would almost argue that it's sometimes better to not do an accelerator program than it is to do a poor one. Yeah, so many of you guys may disagree with that, but that's my opinion. So there's huge network effects of doing a really good program. And there's also location as network effects. I mean, it's sad, but distance still matters. The Olsons were right, even if they're Irvine. This is a recent Fast Company article, just looking at alumni network of Y Combinator, right? So because we provide a service that's used by a lot of other startups. Well, that helps, but also these are all people that I can reach out to. Like I can shoot these people email and they'll respond to them. It's really useful to have a good alumni network when you're picking an accelerator, which makes it really hard for accelerators to bootstrap themselves and get started because they don't have an alumni network when they start. But from an entrepreneur standpoint, you want to go to an accelerator that has a really good alumni network because those are all that's your crew. Those are your people you can reach out to for help who are going through the exact same thing that you are or did before you did. Another great thing about alumni networks is you get access to people that are typically harder to get access to. So I mean, these guys, I think they're valued at like $1 billion. Well, Brian will respond to my email, right? And so that has some value when I need to ask particular questions. I mean, certainly you don't abuse that. You don't ask people like, I don't know, what keyword should I buy ads on? I mean, if you have a very specific question to ask someone, you can reach out to them. Dropbox is another example of people like that. When someone's gone through your program, you can reach out to these people and ask them questions. And you don't want to abuse it, but alumni networks are powerful. Another thing that you get from sort of a top line accelerator is you get national PR because these accelerators, they have an incentive, right, to do national PR because they're trying to drive all these companies to apply to them. And so if you can ride on the fact that they're trying to be national programs, you can get PR that way. So there will be press releases that are talking about, oh, here are the latest batch of Techstars companies. Well, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that national press for some of the smaller guys. I mean, there's Wall Street Journal articles. I mean, there's just certain effects of being in a higher tier, and this kind of like ties into my like, hey, in some cases it may be better to just apply to the good ones and not get in and keep doing a really really good job. And at some point you'll get to the point where you don't even need an accelerator, and you'll just go and raise your first round of money. Because I've seen a lot of people go to some of the other accelerators and not be too successful afterwards. The only point I'm trying to make here is that there's network effects of some of the bigger accelerators as well, and this is location based. So if you look at capital markets of like where there's like free capital hanging around that can be spent on or burned on startups, New York City is a good place. Silicon Valley is a good place. And then I think Boulder, surprisingly, has done a pretty good job bringing money into it. I know people that raise money and have successfully raised money in Ann Arbor, but a lot of them have to go outside of Ann Arbor to bring the money back here. It's a lot easier if you can walk down the street and talk to someone. And you don't even need to go through an accelerator. Like I have my friends are doing Skillshare.com, which is in the upper right. They didn't go through an accelerator. You can just go. You can build your network and you can pitch directly to investors. You don't need to like have this program in between you and your money raising. But I mean, you have to work at it. You have to build that network. You have to make it your job. So this is just like just summing up, roughly speaking, more or less. You're at University of Michigan. This is an incredible institution. You didn't go to like San Jose State, right? Like think about the same sort of thing when you're choosing, what sort of program to go for. And sometimes you don't need a program. So remember that. So there you go. Be strategic. If you're doing a cloud service and you need rack space, there's a program called Techstars Cloud in San Antonio. Most people wouldn't think about that program, but if you want to get bought by Rackspace, that may be a great program to go to. I mean, so just look at the list and think about sort of the pros and cons of each one. When we were making our decision, we actually got into both Techstars, Boulder, Boston, which just started, and Y Combinator. And so we had the choice between 3 locations and roughly 3 different programs, because Techstars is almost a franchise, so every location is a little bit different. And we looked at a few factors. One is we looked at location, like what are the benefits to the location. We looked at alumni network, and we looked at alumni network of companies that we could partner with, because our product could benefit greatly if we could partner with people. So if we could distribute our live chat through someone else's website, it would help us out a lot. And Y Combinator happened to have the biggest alumni network and the most companies we could partner with, and that was really what led us to choose it. I mean, it honestly was a really hard decision for us. It wasn't like, oh, there's a clear solution. We really kind of liked the idea of living in Boulder and going skiing, and Boulder has great weather, and Boston was much closer to our family. So like, there's a lot of factors that go into this when you're choosing where to go and what to do. All right, so that's the easy stuff, right? Like you've gotten through. You've gotten your team, right? You got your idea. Maybe you went to an incubator, maybe you didn't. And now you have to build a company, right? And I've already been talking for about 50 minutes, so I'm not gonna go on that long. I'll just kind of like gloss through what we've been up to, right? This is my little like slideshow. What's going on? What's Ben been doing? So we moved out to California. You saw my cake on the last day I was in Michigan. Well, I think I've been back once since then, but this is the longest I've been in a while. So this is like where we started, right? We were in a 3-bedroom house. We had 4 people in it. One guy slept in the dining room. He had a curtain for a door. And our living room was just it was an office, right? So we basically just worked. We worked solidly from May until basically August, like late August. And the reason we did that is because we were going through this accelerator program called Y Combinator, which has a very definitive start date and a very definitive end date. And on that end date, you get to pitch your startup to basically famous angel investors and VCs and stuff like that, and it's all very exciting. And so you want to have something to show when you get to the end of that 3-month period. A lot has changed since then. You now get a lot more money. A lot of companies get funded while they're going through the program, but I can't comment on that because I haven't been there. But for us, work really hard for 3 months, and you don't have very much money. They gave us $25,000 for 4 people, and basically what we used that money to do was to pay rent and to eat. We did not pay salaries. We did not have benefits. We ate. We bought all our food at Costco, and we worked, and that's basically what we did. And it was fun, but it's not sustainable to work that hard. So as you continue your company, it's good to have these start and ending points, these sprints, because you can't sprint forever, and you need to design a company where people want to live there. Or it's a work-life balance, right? So that's something that's always been really important to me. So I graduated from Y Combinator. This is Andrew left and is now doing something in New York, but the rest is the core team. So he was the junior who decided to go back to school rather than stay with us. As your company grows, you'll get to go to conferences. You'll hire more people. You get cool T-shirts. Get a nice backdrop. There's a lot to grow in a company. You'll invite 5-Hour Energy over to the office. Go crazy. Give them some art. You need to have a good time while you're doing this. That's ridiculous. And then, you grow the team, you hire more people, the company's expanding, and you get excited, right? Because you have this curve, right? It's this success curve. Is what curve are we on? And you think like, hey, what's going to happen next? And that's where we're at. We're trying to figure out like where are we going. And we're doing all right. We're up to 10 employees. We didn't raise any money. We bootstrapped it. We're paying good salaries to everyone, but it's just the beginning. So here are my lessons. Here's my formula for success for all you budding entrepreneurs, SI students, right? So learn by doing. Get out there, just start. Even if you have no idea how to start a business, like I did it when I was in high school. You guys are a little bit smarter than I was in high school, so you can figure it out. Make a lot of friends. You want to meet a lot of people, because the more people you know and the nicer you are to those people, just in general, the better your life will be and the stronger your network will be, and the more people you'll have that want to help you out, especially if you help those people out too. There's a lot of reciprocity. People that are out for themselves are very rarely successful. There are a few successful people that are out there for themselves, but it is much harder to be that person than to be someone who's more of a community-minded or friend-minded person. Remember to validate your idea as soon as you can, so you don't waste a lot of time and or spend a lot of money, and make your idea real, because that's the next step once you've proven that that can exist. So I'm happy to answer questions. That's my talk.
Before Ben takes questions, I just want everybody to know what you're smelling is dinner back here. Please help yourself to food while we have the questions and answers. Don't stand on formality. We're all waiting for you here. I'll let you.
Oh yeah. Are there any questions? There's no questions. All right. What's your name? Sorry.
I'm Doug Dormer. I graduated before there was a school of information for this place.
Excellent.
And I've been in the business for quite a long time. It's been a great place to come from. The business school for the students that offers some great programs. My company served as one of the companies for Professor Brophy's entrepreneurship program last semester. Wonderful program. People from all over the university. I strongly advise you to do that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Professor
So
Brophy's course.
Let me give you a quick thing that I'm thrilled to have you here today in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a kind of a serial entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
The company we have right now deals in patient engagement, which is a slow-growing area.
Mm-hmm.
We work with Microsoft and Google when it was in it, and others. And the claim to fame we have is we tailor our solutions to fit the particular health interests of a clinic or a community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we bring further, instead of just clinical stuff, we bring social media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're working under a grant from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration,
Mm-hmm.
to provide a solution, patient engagement for substance abuse for rural patients, for a company called Centerstone, the largest healthcare substance abuse organization in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
We got moderated chat. We needed live chart. We found Olark.
Uh-huh.
It's right now going, it's in client acceptance testing. It's already running great.
All right, excellent.
And it's going to go live. It's already scheduled next week. We're ahead of track to go with the client. And this afternoon, as I'm sitting here with you, I've got the first real patients using Olark to communicate under what's called a burning desire button.
All right.
We've got moderated chat. We've got public stuff, moderated chat, Olark, and then you get into the regulated program, which is our expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Olark allows someone to say, I would like to talk to a counselor right now. Or, no one's online, leave me a message, we'll get back to you as soon as someone is online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very cool stuff, it's thrilling. Next week I'll be at HIMSS in Las Vegas talking about this to a bunch of folks in the field.
Oh,
Marketing the hell out of it.
that's awesome. I really
So I got
appreciate
one
that.
little hitch for you.
Yeah, I want to. I figured I was going to get hit with. I figured I was going to get hit with something, like.
So speaking of not always returning messages,
All right. What?
we had a great exchange with you. One of the requirements that we have, because now the question is, does a chat session constitute protected health information under HIPAA and certain other federal regulations? We sent the nice message, got a note back that said, yep, we're absolutely good to go with HIPAA-related security. Our systems will cover that.
Did we seriously write that back?
I'll assume you did not.
That is really bad.
So then I sent the next question.
That was whoever wrote that. Yeah, I'll track him down.
Mind signing a business associate agreement. It's a legal agreement that just says you agree to play by these rules, because if not, I'm going to have a real hard time getting it through the feds that we're doing this.
Yeah,
Or I
sure.
got to redefine it as not covered.
Yeah, I think you need to redefine as not covered. Like I don't.
I did not get a response to that second answer, but you're already giving me.
Did you emailed support at olark.com?
Pardon me?
You emailed support. Who did you?
Yeah,
Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
My CTO did.
Okay. Well, I'll look into that, and we'll work it out.
So we're thrilled to have you
Yeah, I would say don't use us for HIPAA requirements.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the requirements. We're fairly secure, but HIPAA has very specific regulations, and so we should be familiar with
We
those.
should talk about that. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
not that bad when it comes to something like this. It's a matter of spelling out the expectations.
Yeah, yeah.
We can talk about it.
Okay, excellent.
Great program.
Appreciate it. So any other questions involving HIPAA compliance? All right, so Chuck, another question.
I'm also an Olark customer. I just have one for my classes. So in the earlier days,
Mm-hmm.
there had to be some source of money. Because hosting and
So
you were giving away for free for a while.
So
I mean, was
at
this your mom or something? that-
okay, so at the very beginning, right? So 2007, right? We were just giving it away. So I had this other company I was talking about before that you may have missed when I talked. I don't remember when you walked in, but like basically I had this hosting company, I had this consulting company. And so what we did is we taxed the consulting company to pay for the startup. So we paid ourselves worse wages, and then we paid ourselves those same worse wages to build the startup. So we'd bill a client $100 an hour. We'd pay ourselves $35 an hour or something like that to build it all out.
So in a sense, you kind of worked part-time on Olark, and another thing that was money-making.
Right.
That subsidized it.
Absolutely, on the beginning days. And then once we did have a little bit of capital starting off. The biggest, hosting it was actually pretty, relatively cheap when we were just getting started. It was probably under $100 a month. So like if you eat out, if you cut 3 times you eat out a month or 4 times you eat out a month, then you can pay for your hosting. Certainly, you order less Starbucks drinks, maybe 20 less Starbucks drinks a month, you can pay for your hosting. So like, it's not that hard. Now, I will admit that we didn't raise very much money for this, but part of the benefit of being in a good accelerator program was that there are perks. And so basically, Rackspace gave us, $36,000 worth of hosting for free. And that made things very easy for us. And now they're making all their money back because we pay them tons of money. So it was a good deal for them. But certainly there are some stages where having a little bit more capital can be useful. And we lucked out by getting, our company was basically funded by us working for free and by kind of some fringe benefits through our accelerator program. We probably could have done it without the fringe benefits. We might have been a little bit more concerned about how we spent our money on hosting. Yes?
What made you decide to leave the program? To devote yourself to this full time?
Well, so I had always been interested in doing companies for a very long time. And I'd done this on the side for a long time as well. So I sort of reached this point where I would say I was doing well in the PhD program. So I had a few papers published. I had managed to become webmaster for HCIC, which meant I got to go to the exclusive human-computer interaction conference with all the bigwigs every year. Like no PhD student gets to do that except for the webmaster. So I'd got that position. We'd applied for an NSF grant that we ended up getting for almost $1 million to do my dissertation. So there's a lot of things that are going very well for me, and I freaking loved SI, and I was having a ton of fun. I had a lot of great friends. There were a few factors that were external to that led me to leave. One was I always wanted to do this company, and I figured that if you did a company post PhD, so I get the PhD, then I did a company, I just burned my PhD because I'm not going to be able to get an academic job because I'm not going to be publishing. So why'd I get the PhD if I wanted to use it to get an academic job? Well, there you go. There's no reason there. Another thing that happened was that so my wife had moved to Cornell, and so I was kind of unhappy, and I wanted to change things up. And so I guess she was my girlfriend at the time. My now wife had moved to Cornell, and I was unhappy. I'm like, I need to change things. If I move to California and do a startup, then I'll be able to spend more time with my girlfriend. Well, that was certainly that wasn't true, but somehow in my head I was like, oh well, gotta do something exciting. But I think the main reason that I figured was I could always go back and finish the PhD if I really wanted it, and and I figured I could get in SI again if I needed to. But It was a good opportunity, and it was something I always wanted to do. And I didn't want to go through life just thinking like, what if I had like tried to go all in on doing a company, because it seemed like it was pretty easy to never get that opportunity until post tenure if I was going academic, and I didn't really want to wait that long. So there was a few factors. And when I left the program, I went and I talked to a ton of people. I talked to my advisors. I talked to Jeff, the dean, right? Like we had a meeting. I was chatting. He's like, I evaluate risk. And I'm like, well, all right. Well, in my view, the risk is zero, because I go off and do this company. If I want, I'll come back and finish the PhD. And if I don't want to finish the PhD, well, probably it didn't matter, right? So that was my thinking anyway. Any more questions, Devon? You had something, right?
Yeah. So do you have any more specific tips about if you're not technical, making friends with technical people?
I think having the desire to learn a little bit, I think, is a really good way to get technical people. Like, there's a lot of people who enjoy teaching other people. If you don't have that desire, it might be a little harder. Maybe having, like reading, let's say you're just trying to like learn more about a particular area, right? Like maybe, reading common blogs, knowing the current events in a field, just being able to have a conversation, like a useful conversation with a technical person, is a good way to, make it easier to have friends. And also, technical people have other things that they're into that are not technical. So you may have, something in common, like maybe you're already in some club that's full of engineers that you don't even know. So like, I would say like one trick would be to like make friends and try to figure out where all the engineers hang out. That would be my advice. Yeah.
So, in the early stages when it was still called Hopla,
Mm.
you were contacted by Vivo.
Uh-huh.
But later, deciding to make it Olark, you decided to, sort of set Vivo aside, even though it's in a similar, industry, and go for your competitive advantage. How did you make that decision, and what was your competitive advantage that you decided on?
Oh, it's actually really interesting because I was doing a lot of reminiscing when I was preparing for this talk. So I went back and I found an email that we had sent, and it was an email from one of our advisors. So Doug Song is one of our advisors, and he was talking about, I don't know, well, what about IMO? What about Meebo? And in the response, we're like, well, look, Meebo has raised $25 million. Their focus is, they make all their money off advertising. So like Seth, their CEO, is building out, basically is an ad sales like New York office. He's a huge ad sales New York office. He has a big team. They're not really making, I would say they're not creating the value that they need to create to sort of justify that $25 million that were put into them. If he decides to pivot and like build a B2B, like a B2C tool, like a consumer, business to consumer tool, he's going to get fired, right? I mean, because they would have to make a major pivot in order to be a real competitor for us. They also had this free product. It was called MeeboMe, and that was like the most competitive thing to us. Like there's this free MeeboMe product. Like, all right, they may put maybe someone at Meebo will have this side project that they'll work on MeeboMe and like make it better. But we're like, the chances of that are so unlikely because Seth is a good CEO and he's going to focus his guys to focus on the stuff that's making them money and not like the little things. And actually, I actually recently had a phone call with Meebo about just like basically buying MeeboMe from them because they don't care. Like they could care less about maintaining it. What I actually asked them is, could I target ads just to people that were using MeeboMe, telling them not to use MeeboMe? And they seemed interested, but we haven't really taken it that far. But I mean, basically, for companies, it's important to understand how your competitors make money and understanding like where they're going to move in the future. And you can be wrong about that. And we didn't really view Meebo as a competitor at that point. I mean, they were kind of in the same space, but they weren't really doing the same thing as us. Now, certainly there are a lot of live chat competitors. LivePerson is probably the best known live chat competitor. And I own stock in LivePerson because I am betting on the industry. I think that live chat is like both like the Fortune 500 guys, which LivePerson is really focused on, and the small guys. There's going to be a lot of them, and the whole industry is going to make money. So yeah, I mean, there's competitors out there, and you're like, okay, well, what if LivePerson, who makes, I don't know, $140 million a year, decides to spend $40 million competing with us? And it's just kind of like, well, I mean, they might, but odds are they're going to spend that $40 million like expanding their current market, which means focusing on Fortune 500 people, where they already make all their money. They're a very sales-oriented company. All their engineering's in Israel. All their sales guys are in New York. I don't know. Like, we were a little bit worried for a little bit when they brought on. So there's a company called Salesforce that makes CRM software. It's pretty well known. So LivePerson had hired the guy who designed Salesforce's platform, like their services platform, where other companies could build and sell plugins for Salesforce. And they'd hired him, brought him on the Salesforce. None of it bothered him in LivePerson. I was a little worried about that, but then that guy left because I guess he didn't fit with their culture. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about LivePerson right now. I think it's more likely that LivePerson will buy someone in our space and build something in our space, and then we'll just hope that maybe that's us, or maybe we'll just beat whoever they buy. So that's what we're thinking. Sir.
That sort of just brings up the question: how do you sort of polish your company to be acquired by?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and we internally we have a lot of discussions about this. Like, are we trying to be bought? I mean, for me right now, I'm just trying to build a company that's impossible to compete with, and then I'll worry about being bought. So, for me, and there are some things you can do to make it easier to be acquired. One is to make lots of friends, right? So I've talked to the CEO of LivePerson. Like, we had, I don't remember. I guess we had coffee together. We didn't eat anything. So, and he occasionally responds to my email. So it's important to make those connections early on. Maybe not say hey Rob, buy my company, but hey Rob, I'm alive, right? Because just if he's going to come up with a bucket list of consumer B2C companies to buy, it's going to be the ones he's heard of, not the ones he hasn't. So I would say it fits into making friends. But I mean, right now, I don't know. I don't want to be bought by LivePerson. I want to build something that is impossible for anyone to compete with, and that's what I'm focused on right now. Daniel?
How can you decide your pricing model? Do you do any research?
I looked at all the competitors, and then we priced a little bit under, and then we tripled them. But we tripled them over time, and we just saw if people stopped buying it, and we're probably going to raise them again. So I mean, basically, what we do actually, and this is actually a good strategy if you're building a SaaS company, just there's two things that we do. One is we default all the people to buying annually, so we get more money up front, which we use to fund the business. The other thing we do is we change prices, but we always grandfather all the people that are already paying. So we have customers that are paying us $5 a month for a plan that we now charge $20 a month for. We don't care, right? Because most of our customers are in the future; they're not in the past, and we prefer to keep our guys, to really like us. So. If you go tell everyone you're doubling their prices, they're going to be pissed off. If only new customers get doubled prices, I mean, they don't even know. The internet's so ephemeral, they probably don't even remember the prices last time they looked at the website. And so, yeah, we just raise prices until we see I don't know. We probably could have been more smart about it, but basically we've just been very slowly raising our prices and seeing if there's any effect on signups, and there hasn't been any effect yet. So we'll probably keep raising them, and we'll see. Lydia had a question.
So there's an analogy of skating to where the hockey puck is and then skating to where the hockey puck is not.
Uh-huh. Oh my gosh. I don't play hockey. Skating to where the puck is, I mean, I think for me, I guess you can go back to the basic metaphor. The basic reason we started this in the first place was that all right, the internet is going to be more producers than consumers, so there's going to be more live chat. That's basically we started there, and we decided, all right, the world will kind of come to us. We're all right, we'll start with the early adopters, and we think the whole world will sort of move towards us. And so well, basically what we decided, we looked at a lot of different industries right at the beginning. We looked at real estate, we looked at car dealers. What we eventually decided was that the easiest people to reach were the people that were building e-commerce websites online. And the reason they were the easiest to reach is because there were platforms you could go after. So there's like, we can go after one platform and get awareness to 30,000 people. You could try to do that for real estate too, except for real estate people are, they're behind technology. They're not early adopters. So you need to go where the early adopters are, and early adopters are in e-commerce. And they sit in front of their computers a lot, so it's easy for them to chat with people. They also see the value very easily because there's a very clear value proposition when you talk to someone and they buy something immediately. It's a harder value proposition when you talk to someone and they want to like show a house or like come to the dealership or like some other situation. So we wanted to find a market where there was a very clear value proposition and an easy way to distribute to those people. Chuck.
Like graphic work, you're 10 persons, so you graphic work and marketing
Mm-hmm.
and kind of that stuff that makes you look like a bigger company than you are,
Mm-hmm.
glossy kind of stuff. Do you insource that or outsource?
We're completely in-house for everything except for tutorials. We occasionally outsource tutorials to Odesk because you can buy a tutorial for $75 from someone who actually knows how to use the software. So yeah, everything we do is in-house. We started off, the original 4 founders were, the solidifying 4 founders was me, I would say I'm business technical, Roland, who's excellent designer, who did the logo, who did our whole website, Zach, who's an amazing engineer, Matt, who's another amazing engineer. So like we had a really solid technical product team. Recently, we've hired incredible marketing people. So like it's just starting, right? So we haven't done any marketing, so to speak, that's where someone's been focused on it. It'll start. The guy started 2 weeks ago, so things are ramping up in that approach. We also hired 2 more designers. So like we're very, very focused on being beautiful and being very easy to use and just making that part of our brand. Because I think a lot of people in the space go out and build really complicated solutions, and I think simplicity can win in the long run.
It's interesting that design was one of the first 4.
I think it's absolutely key. I think that for us anyway, for this product, because we were competing in a space that had competitors that were all really ugly, and we wanted to not look anything like a competitor. And that's part of the reason why we chose our name. All of our competitors have names like Live Person, Bold Chat, Provide Support, Website Alive. They're all like 2 English words, and it's easy to get them confused. We wanted to be something so people wouldn't like get us confused with any of the competitors.